Hello everyone, it is me, GamePenguin21, and today, well, the first video of this year is most likely going to be an actual positive one to look positively towards the new year. Now, of course, and obviously, this one is going to be a gaming review because I like video games. Duh. I know that a lot of you are probably expecting more, like, solid content and stuff like that. And don't worry, those will be in the works, but I wanted to get this video out because personally I really enjoy this, and I already have the script and stuff written out, and if I don't do it, I'm most likely going to just, like, keel over. So, with that being said, today we are talking about and reviewing The Finals, the free-to-play first-person shooter that's arena-type, Tarkov-type, extraction shooter-type this, type that. It's a very interesting amalgamation of games. But we're going to get into the general premise of the game and sort of quote-unquote story to then get into the good, bad, and ugly parts of this game, which we're just going to talk about. So overall, the general story-ish of this game is that you are a person or a contestant on this game show called The Finals, which is a virtual reality gaming show that is set in the whatever the hell future that we have here. We're talking extreme virtual reality stuff. It's not actually a VR title. It is just a very, it's just the premise of the game. One of, if not the biggest other premises of this game is the fact that each of the characters that you play as has different specializations and or like superpower type things to allow you to do various aspects, and again, we'll get into all of that really cool stuff as well. Again, this being a virtual reality environment, there's a lot of extreme and really weird things that can happen to it, and again, getting into all of that in some of the good stuff as well. But overall, the main gameplay loop is that you go into this arena. It's a 3v3v3v3 thing. So basically, teams of 3 versus other teams of 3 fight it out in these giant arenas to be able to get money. In this case, it's like the point system or whatever, but it gets money and eliminations and things like that. And overall, even though this is like a more mature-ish game, it actually doesn't have a lot of blood because most of the blood is replaced with coins, which makes sense in the context of this being like a virtual reality thing, so they can get away with like having some pretty visceral violence-ish, but also like there's no dead bodies or anything around, because it just exploded to a shower of coins and like this little figurine that kind of drops, which I think is just really cool in my personal opinion. It's interesting. Now again, we'll get into all of that as well, but yeah. But overall, what are the good aspects about it, and how do you win? Well, to win the game, you'd extract the most money, and you do this. You can even do this tournament style with like actual tournament games, as well as a ranked mode, which is probably one of the more interesting ways to play. But there's just like quick game, casual modes, which is fun, and then you can customize your character. You can customize this. You can't customize guns though, and you only have a limited number of slots for other things. Again, we'll get into all of that right now with the good stuff. The good stuff is that the number one, this game is fun. Despite how I rage at this game sometimes, I rage at this game in the same way that I rage at Call of Duty, where it's a good rage when I'm having fun, and it's a bad rage when I'm not having fun, but overall, I have really a lot of fun with this game. Because one of the big things about this game is that it feels fairly balanced. Overall, all of the guns feel powerful enough to take out an enemy quickly, but again, weak enough to where it's not, to where you still have to use tactics, and you can, like, through good maneuvering, can get out of sticky situations with very little health to this situation. It's a very objective-based game, which I actually like, but there's a lot of team deathmatch style elements to there, which is also fun to have. The different types of kits feel very different, and this allows for a lot of fun customizable combos. There will definitely be some guns and things that are better than others, but overall, the guns themselves feel very balanced in the ways that they can be. The ranged weapons feel good, with the medium classes doing about medium-ish damage, the light class is doing high damage but having low health, and the heavy class is doing a lot of high damage but move very slowly with very little in terms of movement, but having more defensive and destructive capabilities. Those destructive capabilities is amazing because literally most, if not all of the map is destructible. What I mean by this. I'm not talking your little, oh, you can topple a building and it'll change the map at least somewhat slightly. No. We're talking fully capable and destructible environments that can literally change the course of objectives moving from one place to another. You can level city blocks, you can destroy entire buildings, you can topple actual people to the ground. There is a lot of really fun things here, and the most amount of destruction that I've personally seen is that there's a sky system that's kind of suspended in one of the maps. It's this big yellow hallway. If you blow up both sides of it, that whole section will actually fall and will make it so that way you cannot use that section of the map anymore. Like, you can't walk across it, obviously. It's insane how good this destruction capability is, because you can destroy practically anything. Not everything, but a nice amount of stuff. Like, literally 90, I would say 90% of the map you can actually destroy. Most of the buildings too. There's also a really cool thing with the amount of movement options in the game. Of course, with the light class, you have a lot more movement, including things like grappling hooks, invisibility stuff, evasive dodges. We also have bounce pads, zip lines, freaking a charge attack, RPGs. Destruction capability is insane with this. The progression is, again, mostly for cosmetic purposes and to, again, establish your stuff. And again, it feels super fun to play. It's a simple F, yes, absolutely. Boots on the ground, most of the stuff is like that. But the movement system is great too, because it also allows for very interesting parkour type of elements. You can have like infinite sprint because, again, this is hand waved because you're in a virtual reality environment. But you can sprint to a specific degree. You actually have some sort of movements allowing you to kind of slide down ramps, and you actually can build up momentum and things like that if you know what you're doing. It has interesting revive mechanics that allow with like actual barrels to explode with different levels of things. And there's an interesting rock, paper, scissors element, not just in the way that you are using the different classes, that being light, medium, and heavy, but there's also smoke, fire, goo, powder, and stuff like that, all of which can be used in different ways. For example, you have gas, which can be actually destroyed by the fire or any pyro or any flamethrower type thing that will instantly like evaporate the gas pretty quickly. You then have fire, which also destroys goo, but goo takes out fire, or goo takes out, I think, other things. It's interesting the way the mechanic kind of function with each other. It's really, really cool. Before we move on to the more bad stuff and the ugly stuff, I did want to give a couple of interesting tips for classes that I personally have been using for a while here. Now, of course, there is a light ambush style class, there is a light movement class, there is a medium doctor class, there's also a medium defender class that I have here, and then there's a heavy defender class. So these are all like general names of these, but the way that I do it is that for the ambush class, you have a cloak with throwing knives, as well as smokes, flashes, frags, and in the reserve, you can have a pistol, goo, breach, or pyro. That's a full class for you right there. That allows you to get pretty in quickly and out as well. If you want to switch out something, like say the cloak, I would move it into the ambush, because you're supposed to be more movement oriented in this class, because I just think that that's the fun way to do it. With the light movement style, you have the grappling hook with the shoddy, and similar setup to what I had with the other class before, but just having more range options. For the medium doctor, this is obviously with the heal beam and the defibs with possibly smokes too, but smokes aren't actually available on this class, as I have now realized. Or at least I don't think that they're available from what I could do. But I would also recommend one movement gadget for this class as well. So either bounce pad or the zipline. The bounce pad's good enough. With the defender medium one being that you should actually have another movement mechanic for it. But this one you can also have the ADS system, so people throw things at you, but you can just like zap it out of the air. And for this one also, you're going to have the riot shield combo, because that thing actually fucking slaps. And then to make up for the lack of the lack of range options in the reserve, you can have like some pistol or something. But you would need to also have the turret, which is where the defense comes in, like super defense heavy class. building more mines and things like that. And for the heavy defender stuff, is anything having to do with walls, barriers, and stuff. And running a projector wall is good, with guns actually being optional with this, though I would recommend probably the M60 or the other light machine gun. I forget the other specific one off the top of my head. But now we have to get to some of the bad things with this game. Number one is that it's a free-to-play game. I know that I said that was a positive before, but again, it's a free-to-play game with free-to-play mechanics. So just know that going in to bear in mind as well, that has to go with it. The speed can get kind of busy sometimes. It does sometimes hurt to when you get killed from a random direction. Usually you can tell. The lack of kill cam also in this context is a little bit upsetting. I wish that they actually had that, but again, these are the Battlefield devs, they don't really do that. But that could kind of help an understanding of how to fix the problem that you were doing before. When things get busy, there can be a lot of lags. Again, so we're having a lot of physics objects kind of moving around here, including even when you die, because it's like a ton of like particle effects kind of up there that can really mess with some people's frame rates sometimes if you don't have the proper ways of doing it. But overall, adjust the settings and you should be fine with that. The grind with this is real. You have the grind of your weapons, you have the grind of even your equipment, your level, and even the battle pass, all of which are the grind stuff. So if you like grinding stuff in that context, get ready to grind, and trust me, I like this. The equipment costs 1,000 with the other stuff costing 800. It's not a bad thing, I just found it a little bit weird, but after looking at it a little bit more, I understand why they did this, because when you unlock something for that, it actually unlocks the equipment for everyone that uses that equipment. Now, not every class can use every equipment, but certain classes do have specific ones that can utilize between classes. For example, the gas grenade unlocks for all classes, and even some mines also unlock for all classes. It just depends on which one you're going to go for. It works, trust. So yeah, it's not a bad thing, just a little bit weird. Also, sorry if I yawned there. But we're gonna move on here. The game mode, it does make me rage. Hard enough to hurt myself, again, like classic COD, but overall that's more of a rage problem that I tend to have, and even still, even though I'm angry, quote unquote, I still do have a lot of fun with it. It's just, sometimes it can get hyper-competitive, and I'm a kind of hyper-competitive person. There's been a few glitches, too. A few of them being visual as well. Some people going invisible for one reason or another. For another recent visual glitch that I've seen is when the cloak is on the character for a light class. Sometimes they can just be perpetually invisible for me. Same thing with medium classes, where they're very oddly not there for whatever reason. I did have one big game-breaking one, though, that was super bad, and this one should really be patched out, and that is if you get revived at the wrong time for whatever reason, your camera can switch to the position of a friendly player and will not switch back until you die. So it says that you are in spectator mode, but overall you're able to move around and stuff, but your camera is stuck in the eyes of your teammates, which that is literally bad. It literally took me out of the fight for half of the game. You need to fix that, guys. It does happen on rare occasions, and it only happens when a certain set of things happens, but it's happened to be a consistent amount that it gets very annoying. So be sure to at least look into what's causing that. It's a debilitating one, too. It's rare, but it's happened enough again to note about that. Next up, we have a bigger controversial thing, and this is where we start to get into the more ugly stuff. That being the AI voice actors. Now, I'm not going to go into the whole ethics situation about AI and how that can harm people, how that can help people, because overall, the intention of this was to kind of cut down costs, I guess, and for whatever reason, they did actually get the people to license out their voices, and they did do officially for these voices to have them do it. And the only problem with these AI voices, in my personal opinion, is not the fact that they're AI voices, it's more the fact that those voice lines could have easily been used via because they're just candid voice lines. They could have easily just been recorded a whole bunch and then strung together in that way. But considering the fact that they also had like just randomized names for each of the teams within a small pool, I guess it makes sense that they would use AI voices to kind of generate that on the fly. But at the same time, it's again still candid voices lines that's just really could be done by anyone. So it's a little bit harder to say. This will be a point at which some people will say, I'm not going to support this because I think that voice actors need to be compensated and need to actually be paid for their work. And to a huge extent, I 100% agree that that is the case. If you can get voice work done, just get voice work done. Don't use like AI voices and stuff in this official capacity. But they've already made those decisions, and again, they did it officially. They got the permissions that they needed. They signed the paperwork, and I'm fairly certain that the people who did the voice acting work for those AI voices are fine with it. And again, I don't think that this is the first or the last time that we'll see stuff like this, and these controversies will come up again. I just wanted to mention that it does have AI voices. If you just want to like not support it, I would completely understand. But if you are still here with me, there's a couple more ugly things here that we got to get into. One of them, the biggest things here, is the connection to the servers. Now, I think that the biggest thing and the biggest problem we will see in some of my other gameplay that I've posted to this channel and to my TikToks and stuff is the fact that I get a lot of lag. Now, personally, I don't think you will experience this if you have a pretty decent connection, mainly if you have a hardwired connection. My internet is pretty meh. Even with the specific systems that I have and trying to make it improvements and making it worse, it's one of those things where the connection for the online servers will dictate how this game kind of plays out. Sometimes it can be debilitating for me, but so long as you're playing within your same region, obviously the same thing goes for everything, and you have a pretty decent internet connection from your computer to your router, however you want that, you should be fine. But it's a big enough issue to point out for me personally. Again, it's probably not the best, and I don't have the best internet connection in the first place, so again, take that for what you will, but I have had internet connection issues with this game, and there was a time when I was in the queue, but that might have been a much busier day. Overall, that's not the end-all be-all breakpoint for me, because even when it was lagging for me, I was still having fun, and when the game runs fine and flawlessly, so those games were so much fun, because this entire game, despite its flaws, despite all the bad and all the other stuff that I listed off in here, all those things, this solid, tight gameplay, the solid, tight gadgets, movement, and everything just working together in such an interesting harmony that is just so good about this game. It is a well-polished, well-crafted experience that if you are in any way an FPS or even just a regular Call of Duty or Battlefield fan, and Call of Duty and or Battlefield is not scratching that itch, this will scratch that itch. And again, it is a free game. And yeah, absolutely, 100%. Have all the skepticisms and stuff that you want. But trust me when I say this game is so well done. And if this is just the baseline stuff here, it's great. Again, I will also say that another little negative is the amount of content in the game. It feels more than it is. And again, that's not a bad thing. They only have about 4-ish maps that you play on a lot, but they actually have ways of making those maps feel different because there's certain maps. Because the maps themselves also have special events that can sometimes happen and can take place at different times of the day. For example, just to give an example, each of the maps has 2 distinct special events with either a night or day mode per event. And each of those modes has like special things here, where some of them have a big massive middle area where it's usually inaccessible, just being completely demolished. There's on the New Vegas map that actually has a dust storm that comes in and just wipes out pretty much half the map, completely changing the layout of it entirely. So yeah, it's definitely more content than you might expect to go into, because again, these maps are kind of hard to design because you have to design these maps to be fully and completely destructible. They're a little bit hard, but I expect and hope for more maps coming down the pipeline. Overall, what is my final verdict on this game? Well, despite it having the connection issues that I mentioned before, that again might be just a personal thing, despite it having the AI voices, despite it having the flaws of where sometimes those glitches and things that I mentioned before, which really are only very rare, but again, really look into that, guys. That should be patched out. Overall, when it works, which is 95% of the time, it is flawlessly fantastic. And I can't think of a single reason not to at least try and pick up this game and put it into your rotation. Because quite honestly, this game right here is amazing. It's tightly designed gameplay. It's amazingly just well-balanced architecture. The feel and the fit of the gameplay loop is amazing. Overall, I think that this game is definitely worth your time in gold. It is fantastic. And even if this game was about like even just maybe $20, it would still be worth it. Maybe even worth that good old premium $60. But they didn't offer it. They offered it for free, and by God, I am playing the shit out of it. Considering the fact that I also have about like 60 hours now at the time of maybe this going out, yeah, you can kind of explain why I have a lot of hours in this. Anyway, that's going to be my whole rant and review on the finals. And personally, again, I think 100% that it's worth their time investment. But that's just my personal opinion. And if you like what it is that I do and want to support me in any way, shape, or form other than your viewership, which is always enough, links down to everything in the description below. Patreon, YouTube, stuff like that. And be sure to like, comment, favorite, and subscribe as well. But with that being said, my name is GamePenguin21. This game is just fantastic and a piece